An old man listens to a tape recorder and tries to imitate the voice from the recording. He then walks into the living room where his double lies on the couch with a rope around his neck. The old man takes his pass and leaves, hiding a gun. Later, he appears at the old man's workplace, a janitor's job, pretending to be him. The security guard lets him in, but something suddenly arouses his suspicion. He tries to stop the killer, but the killer opens fire. However, his target, Elias, the son of Manfred Fest, a candidate for Chancellor of Germany, manages to escape. The old man chases him down the stairs, but for some reason doesn't finish him off. The killer makes his getaway by throwing smoke grenades into the street and descending from the roof. Returning home, he removes a mask and prepares for his next assassination by assembling a unique sniper rifle from suitcase components. He then positions himself by the window, sets up the rifle, and waits for Fest to arrive. Fest's son was just a decoy. Now the politician is bound to come to the hospital, and so it happens. Despite heavy security, the killer hits his mark with precision. He waits a few more seconds for the guards to spot the glint of his scope and then leaves, triggering the fire alarm. The police race to his house, but by that time the killer has already reached another parking lot and switched cars. Meanwhile, a SWAT team storms his apartment where they find a bomb. The car in the garage explodes too. In London, at MI6 headquarters, Agent Bianca Pullman learns about the assassination. Later, she returns home to her husband, Paul, and daughter, Jasmine, and hears on the news about a shooter who killed a politician from an unprecedented distance. At that moment, the killer is undergoing a border inspection as he leaves Germany. The next morning, Bianca learns that the sniper was 3.7 kilometers away from his target, breaking the world record. She insists on being included in a meeting attended by a representative of German intelligence. The department head, Isabel, reluctantly agrees. At the meeting, video footage of the suspect with a suitcase is shown. Known rifles couldn't fit in such a case, meaning the weapon was custom-made. Bianca knows only one craftsman capable of such work, Norman Stock from Northern Ireland, who has long been on the run from the police. Bianca believes she can find him through her informant in Belfast. Meanwhile, the killer, having changed his appearance, flies to Paris and goes to an internet cafe to check his account, where the final payment for Fest's assassination should have been deposited. Bianca flies to Belfast. The killer receives a message about a new job, but the client demands a face-to-face meeting, something the killer never does. However, upon learning the amount, $10 million, he agrees, demanding a $1 million advance. Bianca meets her informant, Allison, and demands she find out Norman Stock's whereabouts through her husband, Larry, who turns out to be the gunsmith's brother. The killer travels to Sweden, where he meets the client's representative, Leonora, and, upon learning the name of his next target, multiplies the fee tenfold. Bianca, frustrated by Allison's silence, proposes pressuring her through her daughter, Emma, who is involved with a radical leftist group. Emma is arrested during a demonstration and intimidated by being locked in a cell. Meanwhile, the killer returns home to Spain, where his wife and son are waiting for him. Emma suffers cardiac arrest and is rushed to the hospital, but dies on the way. The killer contacts the client, demanding payment for the Munich job, but is told to go to hell. The next day, Allison, enraged, calls Bianca. The agent cannot admit that Emma is dead and again demands Stock's phone number. Isabel acknowledges that the Allison is their only lead for now. However, they won't be able to conceal Emma's death for more than a day. Bianca calls Allison and promises to get her daughter out of jail if she provides Stock's number. Meanwhile, the killer receives his next target, a tech magnate named Ul Dog Charles, known as UDC. He also plans to find out who double-crossed him on payment. At the same time, shadowy businessmen in New York debate whether Charles's death is worth $100 million. The problem lies in the magnate's new project, Rivera, which promises global economic fairness through complete financial transparency. Although Charles knows others aren't ready to disclose their wealth, this forces the businessmen to agree to the killer's asking price. Meanwhile, Allison asks her husband to call his brother to borrow money for a trip to London. At the same time, the killer and his wife, Nuria, are enjoying a family gathering when he learns that the advance payment for Fest's assassination was transferred from Munich. He announces his departure, but Nuria insists on driving him to the airport. Meanwhile, Bianca examines surveillance footage from Fest's office and notices a trace of a removed brand tag on his backpack. Additionally, the killer used an uncharacteristic handgun. The killer says goodbye to his wife at the airport, but after stepping away, takes a taxi instead. He heads to a bank where he keeps numerous passports under different names and stash cash. On his way back, however, the taxi drives past Nuria and she recognizes her husband. Allison again asks her husband to call Stock, and he admits that he already did, but Stock was unreachable. Meanwhile, Bianca identifies the brand logo removed from the killer's bag and concludes that he is British, possibly a former soldier. The killer then receives a call from his clients confirming the $100 million payment, but they again demand a face-to-face meeting. Allison manages to photograph Stock's phone number on her husband's phone and sends it to Bianca. Bianca discovers that Stock is in Belarus and heads there. Meanwhile, Leonora meets with the killer and he agrees to eliminate the magnate. When asked for a code name, he asks to be called the Jackal. Later, he visits a bank and discovers that the withheld payment was made from the corporate account of a large company. Meanwhile, Bianca and her team arrive at the house they're targeting, but Stock was expecting them. As the agents storm inside, explosions erupt, killing her teammates while Stock escapes. However, Bianca finds the suitcase that the Jackal used in the forest. The Jackal, meanwhile, tracks down his client, Elias Fest, the very man he spared in Munich. Allison receives news about Emma and together with her husband heads to London. Bianca demonstrates the sniper's modular rifle to her superiors. Isabel decides to continue the operation. Bianca calls Allison and requests a meeting. Meanwhile, the Jackal infiltrates one of Elias's offices and tricks a specialist into installing remote access software on a computer. At the same time, Elias begins rehabilitation training, determined to walk again after his injury, as his father's funeral is fast approaching. The Jackal, gaining access to the company's files, uncovers the identity of Elias's driver. He then calls Nuria, who confesses that she saw him in the city. The Jackal is forced to show her the room he's in via video call. Nuria pleads with him to come home, but the killer makes excuses about urgent work. Suspicious, Nuria searches his room and finds a floor safe in a hidden door. Meanwhile, in London, a distraught Elias meets Bianca just as her husband receives a call from his brother. Bianca shifts the blame for Emma's death onto Emma herself, claiming she neglected her health. She frightens Allison by warning her of the legal consequences of harboring a criminal. Nevertheless, Allison refuses to cooperate, but when she returns home, her husband, who has learned of her betrayal, brutally beats her. Meanwhile, investigating the deaths of 2 agents at Stock's hands, investigator Carver expresses suspicions about Bianca herself. She reminds him that she barely survived Belarus, suggesting the leak came from someone in leadership. Back in Spain, Nuria tries to crack the safe's code with help from her mother and brother, Alvaro. When they fail, Alvaro suggests using tools to break the lock. In London, Bianca's immediate superior, Halcro, summons her and warns her not to trust anyone. At this time, the Jackal receives the advance payment for his upcoming assassination. He then ambushes Elias's driver, kills him, and places the body in the trunk. Disguised, he takes the driver's place and goes to pick up the politician's son. Meanwhile, Bianca receives a list of officers discharged from the army and discovers that the messages sent before Fest's death came from someone with the code name Jackal. As Elias's security escort him to his car, the Jackal coldly kills the bodyguard once they are on the road and changes the route. Terrified, Elias calls his head of security, pleading for rescue. The security chief gives chase but fails to catch up with the car. The Jackal evades pursuit and stops in a secluded alley. Elias drops his phone without realizing it remains on and confesses that he hired the Jackal to kill his father. He begs for mercy, but the killer repeats Elias's own words, telling him to go to hell, and shoots him. The Jackal then changes his clothes and leaves, planting a bomb in the car. Meanwhile, Bianca receives a message from Allison's phone agreeing to help her. At the same time, Nuria's brother opens the hidden room where the family discovers face molds, weapons, passports, and bundles of cash. They are unaware that the Jackal can monitor the room via hidden cameras. The next day, the media is abuzz with news of Elias's assassination. At MI6, a meeting is convened to discuss the revelation that Elias hired the Jackal to kill his father. However, no one has identified the killer. At the same time, the Jackal is driving through France when, lost in thought, he crashes into a truck. He tries to resolve the situation calmly, but the truck driver is irate. Matters escalate when nearby police arrive. A police officer attempts to inspect the Jackal's car, only to pay with his life. The Jackal shoots the officer and then the truck driver, staging the scene as a shootout between the two before fleeing. Meanwhile, Halcro shares information with Bianca, indicating that the Jackal has taken on a new contract. Nuria's mother and brother suggest she go to the police. However, her husband calls and asks her to come to Paris, promising to reveal the whole truth and decide their future together. In London, Bianca finds the coordinates of a retired sniper who recalls Alexander Dagan, a legendary sharpshooter believed to have died in Afghanistan. Nonetheless, Bianca orders all available data on him to be retrieved. The Jackal rents a hotel room in Paris, but when his wife arrives, she slaps him and demands the truth. The Jackal explains that he solves problems for large corporations, often through industrial espionage, which occasionally involves illegal activities. He promises to quit after completing his last contract. Meanwhile, his clients in New York learn of Elias's assassination and decide to keep the killer on a short leash. In London, it is revealed that Larry killed Allison and sent messages to Bianca, pretending to be her. Bianca meets with Larry, but he attacks her. She escapes and runs onto a crowded bridge, forcing Larry to stop his pursuit and follow her at a distance. Bianca calls for backup, and Agent Vince rushes to her aid, but Larry manages to flee. Later, the police discover Allison's body, deeply affecting Bianca. Larry calls his brother and learns Bianca's home address. All this time, UDC is living on a small island in Croatia. He learns of the contract on his life, but remains determined to proceed with the presentation of his Rivera program in Tallinn. The Jackal's already in Tallinn, scouting the concert hall where the event will take place. Meanwhile, Bianca confides in Vince, sharing everything she knows about the Jackal and admitting she doesn't trust anyone anymore. The Jackal explores the upper tiers of the hall, but the ceiling turns out to be movable, and at one point it opens unexpectedly. The Jackal narrowly escapes, but drops his phone. After the concert, a worker named Rasmus helps him retrieve the device, leaving his number in the Jackal's contacts. At the same time, Bianca returns home to find Larry holding her daughter at knife point. She shoots him in the leg and demands he confess everything, threatening to kill him. However, her daughter intervenes to stop her. Later, the police take Larry away. The Jackal returns to his hotel room and finds Leonora there, despite his efforts to keep their meetings discreet. Leonora warns the Jackal that his employers are far more powerful than he might imagine and urges him to act more responsibly. In the morning, Bianca and Vince visit Larry in the hospital. Bianca interrogates him, demanding Stock's address, but Larry refuses to cooperate. Meanwhile, the Jackal contacts Stock as he needs new equipment. Stock mentions being injured, and the Jackal offers assistance to meet the deadline. At the hospital, after Larry narrowly avoids suffocation under a pillow, he reveals that his brother is in Budapest and gives a visual description of the location. Back at the station, Bianca learns that Alexander Dagan was an exceptional sniper who killed numerous Taliban leaders, but was presumed dead after stepping on a landmine. Bianca requests his photograph while specialists search for the location described by Larry. In Budapest, Stock picks up the Jackal in his car and drives him to his workshop. The Jackal is amazed by Stock's creations, but needs something specific. His weapon must be smuggled into a concert hall. He proposes hiding it inside a leg cast. Stock immediately devises a solution and begins 3D printing the necessary components. Meanwhile, Nuria returns home, unaware that the Jackal can see and hear her every move. Later, Stock reveals that Bianca shot him, but mentions he had received an anonymous warning to flee before the agents arrived. In the morning, Vince informs Bianca that they've located Stock's hideout and the team departs for Hungary. At Stock's workshop, the Jackal tests the completed device, which looks nothing like a weapon. He learns how to assemble and use it, then steps out to test fire it, unaware that agents are closing in on Stock's hideout. After testing, he returns to the city and notices police activity. The Jackal calls Stock and tells him to flee. Stock begins deleting files from his computer, but then opens fire when agents storm the workshop. Despite his resistance, he is captured. Bianca finds the Jackal's bag on a couch and devises a plan to lure him out. The Jackal, however, shoots Stock before he can reveal anything and escapes on horseback. Vanishing into the night forest, Bianca gives chase but loses him when he dives into a lake, avoiding her barrage of gunfire. Exhausted and freezing, the Jackal survives by hiding in a barn and falls asleep in the hay. Upon waking, he finds a gun pointed at his face. He has been tied up and appears to be facing his end. The farmer speaks in a language the Jackal doesn't understand and refuses to listen. He drags the Jackal into his house and calls his brother, whose employee, Laszlo, speaks English. Upon hearing the Jackal's offer to pay for his freedom, Laszlo promises to arrive immediately. On the way, however, their car is stopped by a police officer who warns them about an armed and dangerous foreigner. Back at the farm, the farmer attempts to force-feed the Jackal, carelessly leaving a knife within reach. Later, the freed Jackal packs his belongings into a backpack, leaving the farmer's lifeless body behind. As he steps into the yard and tries to start a car, Laszlo arrives. Entering the house and finding the dead farmer, Laszlo and his brother rush outside, only to be ambushed by the Jackal. He shoots the brother and orders Laszlo to drive him past police roadblocks. Meanwhile, at Stock's workshop, agents try to decipher what he was printing. However, Bianca and Vince are called to a nearby farm where 2 murders have occurred. The Jackal contacts Nuria, apologizing for dragging her into this and informing her that he is in Budapest. Nuria admits she knows about the hidden room, and the Jackal provides instructions on how she can assist him. At the farm, investigators find several fingerprints. Halcro calls Bianca with a directive from Isabel to return to London immediately. Meanwhile, UDC remains on his island in Croatia, but is preparing to announce the launch of Rivera in the coming days, rehearsing his speech behind bulletproof glass. Laszlo drives the Jackal into Budapest, pleading desperately for his life. The Jackal, recalling the bloodshed and death he caused in Afghanistan during his military service, decides to spare him. After extracting a promise to stay silent, he lets Laszlo go and heads to an internet cafe to contact Leonora. Later, the Jackal meets Nuria at a rented apartment, confessing that he needed a disguise to escape Hungary. He assures her that everything was worth it. The Jackal completely changes his appearance and later shows up at the airport as a frail old man in a wheelchair. Nuria flies home while he boards a flight to Tallinn. Coincidentally, Bianca is also at the same airport. Isabel makes an important call and decides to redirect Bianca to Tallinn, where UDC's presentation will take place. When Bianca and Vince board the plane, they are seated directly in front of the Jackal. The flight lands without incident, and the Jackal arrives at his rented accommodation. However, as he removes his disguise, there is a knock at the door. The police are investigating a burglary that occurred in the building that evening. Although his documents are in order, one of the officers, a woman, seems suspicious of him. The Jackal decides to call Rasmus, the worker who helped him find his phone at the concert venue. They go out for drinks and end up at Rasmus's apartment, where they grow closer. The next day, the Jackal meets Leonora at a library, asking for her help in distracting the overly persistent MI6 agents. She promises to do what she can to keep them off his trail. Meanwhile, Bianca and Vince arrive at their operations base. They are informed that the fingerprints found at the farm yielded no results. Search teams comb through hotels, hostels, and rental properties, but they need a composite sketch. Despite having only seen the Jackal briefly and in the dark, Bianca attempts to create a sketch, but it bears little resemblance. Meanwhile, the Jackal tells Rasmus that he adores architecture and dreams of exploring the interior of the concert hall, which he considers a masterpiece of construction. Rasmus offers to take him inside that afternoon, as the venue will be closed off by tomorrow evening. Meanwhile, Nuria's mother and brother ask her to borrow the Jackal's money to open a bar. Nuria hesitates but eventually agrees to let Alvaro into the secret room, though she is visibly uncomfortable. The Jackal, watching the footage, is equally displeased as he sees Alvaro pocket cash and one of his pistols. Later, Rasmus takes the Jackal to the concert hall and gives him his access badge to explore the retractable ceiling structure. The Jackal identifies an ideal spot directly above the stage. After preparing everything he needs, he returns the badge to Rasmus. Meanwhile, agents are informed that one of the female police officers recognized a man named Peter Gibson from the composite sketch. However, as Bianca and Vince leave the building to follow up on the lead, they are ambushed. Narrowly escaping death, they manage to shoot up the attacker's car. When they finally reach the listed address, they find the apartment empty. At the same time, the Jackal bids farewell to Rasmus, claiming he is leaving the country. He then heads back to the concert hall, where a classical music performance is about to begin. After buying snacks and water from the concession stand, he discreetly makes his way to his hiding spot near the ceiling. He assembles his rifle from the orthopedic brace and settles in, preparing for a long wait. However, he is haunted by memories of a failed operation in the Middle East. Meanwhile, agents acknowledge that there is no trace of Peter Gibson to be found. The next day, security at the concert hall is unprecedentedly tight. Numerous agents scour the building, but they fail to check the double-layered ceiling structure where the Jackal is hiding. As the time for the presentation approaches, spectators undergo rigorous checks and the building is swept again. Bianca, directly below the Jackal, is visible to him through the grating. Finally, UDC arrives. When the presenter steps onto the stage, the Jackal emerges from his hiding spot. After taking out 2 security guards, he moves to his pre-selected sniper position. UDC steps onto the stage and begins his speech behind bulletproof glass. The Jackal lines up his shot. However, just as he fires, one of UDC's friends rushes onto the stage and pushes him to the floor, placing him out of the line of fire. The operation is a failure, and chaos erupts in the hall. The Jackal manages to escape amid the confusion. He walks away from the venue, only to be stopped by Rasmus, who is surprised to see him since he claimed he was leaving the country. The Jackal hugs Rasmus before snapping his neck. The scene shifts to Afghanistan in 2013, where the Jackal serves as a sniper. His spotter points out a target, but the Jackal insists it isn't the right person and is prepared to wait as long as necessary. In the present, the Jackal's clients are disappointed by his failure to kill UDC, especially since the magnate publicly announces that his project to expose shadow businesses, Rivera, will go forward at any cost. Leonora promises to address the situation. Meanwhile, agents discover the Jackal's hiding spot at the concert hall and marvel at his patience and precision. However, none of the audience images match the composite sketch. They also learn that Dagon's unit had the highest level of secrecy clearance. The story flashes back to Afghanistan. After 6 hours of waiting, the target finally arrives. Dagon eliminates him, and the unit retreats. Later at the base, the men celebrate their success with soda as Dagon marks the kill on his photo board. Sometime later, Dagon and his teammate Gary relax at a bar and encounter a Middle Eastern man. A drunken Gary laments the hardships of military service, prompting the man to propose solving their problem for generous compensation. In the present, Bianca delivers a presentation, arguing that Dagon might still be alive and that the Jackal is in fact him. Isabel promises to obtain Dagon's unit records. However, the foreign minister insists on meeting with Bianca first. During the meeting, the minister pledges support for the investigation. In the past, Dagon and Gary begin taking private contracts to eliminate targets. It becomes easy money for them, as their skills and all expenses are covered by their clients, allowing them to live comfortably. The only obstacle is their military service. In the present, Alvaro sees a photo of the suspected killer on TV and shows it to Nuria. She calls her husband, who threatens her to silence her brother if she doesn't want trouble. Nuria realizes that her husband is a killer. The story flashes back to Afghanistan. Dagon's unit receives orders to eliminate another Taliban leader. The soldiers approach the target's house while Dagon and Gary take sniper positions and spot an enemy sniper. As the soldiers demand entry into the house, Dagon shoots the enemy sniper, alerting the Taliban. A firefight ensues and the Americans destroy everything in sight, unaware that a wedding is taking place inside the house. Dagon and Gary rush to the scene and are horrified to find the bloodied bodies of the bride, groom, and their guests. Dagon is deeply shaken by the carnage. The rest of the team decides to cover up the incident. Reporting that they are under RPG fire, they call in an airstrike, leveling the house. In the present, Bianca visits Larry in prison. He calls her vile names and, ignoring her apologies, pulls out a hidden knife and slits his own throat. Bianca is shaken, but Vince consoles her and informs her that Dagon's file is waiting in the conference room. Upon reviewing the available documents, agents learn that Alexander Dagon served honorably, received awards, and was reported dead alongside his unit in an explosion. Bianca, however, remains skeptical. The story flashes back to Afghanistan. While en route to a mission, one of the soldiers notices a suspicious hill ahead. Dagon volunteers to investigate and takes Gary with him. Upon inspecting the hill, Dagon finds a child's bicycle. The soldiers relax, but at that moment, a powerful explosion destroys both jeeps. It turns out that Dagon planted the bombs himself, intending to end his military career. In the present, on UDC's island in Croatia, every boat arriving and departing is under surveillance. The Jackal observes the tight security measures. Leonora arrives, reminding him that they only have 48 hours left. The Jackal assures her he will complete the job. Bianca continues investigating Dagon's unit and finds his former commander, Captain Mike Baldwin, who is dying of cancer in a hospital. Baldwin recalls Alexander's partner, Gary Cobb, who might be a critical lead. The agent reports the lead to Isabel, but she announces the closure of the investigation, claiming that they have no substantial evidence. Bianca tries to find Halcro, only to learn he is being interrogated as part of the mole hunt case. Meanwhile, the Jackal returns home, but Nuria doesn't greet him. Instead, she watches through the baby monitor as he reunites with her son, assuring herself of his sincerity about his love for the family. After he puts the baby to bed, she confronts him and demands the truth. He admits he is a professional assassin and says that now that everything is out in the open, they can have an honest conversation. The Jackal confesses that he has one last job to complete, after which he will quit for good. Meanwhile, Bianca finds Halcro, but he advises her to calm down and forget about the Jackal. The Jackal discusses their future life with Nuria and asks her to give him one more day. Later, Alvaro arrives. He reveals his plan to introduce the Jackal to a Cuban gangster, Tejero, hoping to establish a business partnership. Terrified and distressed by the news, Nuria tells her husband, who promises to fix everything. The Jackal then calmly talks to Alvaro and agrees to meet Tejero. At the same time, members of UDC's corporate board urge him to delay the launch of Rivera. When he refuses, they announce a collective resignation. But even this doesn't sway the magnate's determination to discuss corruption in the leadership of two countries. He admits he is powerless against UDC and that their only hope now lies with the Jackal. The Jackal rents a boat, ostensibly for fishing, and kills Tejero from the sea just as Alvaro is telling the gangster about his brother-in-law's immense wealth. The next morning, Bianca reads the news about the strange murder of a gangster in Spain. The Jackal hires another boat, claiming he is going to an island where a rare seabird nests, a bird he has allegedly been hunting for years. However, he asks the boat owner to stop in open water. When the owner starts asking questions, the Jackal kills him and assembles a unique device designed by Stock, allowing him to shoot accurately from a rocking boat. Meanwhile, UDC decides to stay in bed and skip his swim for the day. However, his partner persuades him not to break his routine. The security team notices the boat but keeps watch from a distance as it is beyond firing range. UDC begins swimming, accompanied by a bodyguard. A wave disrupts the Jackal's shot. The head of security sends a jet ski to investigate the boat. The Jackal kills the rider and destroys a drone monitoring the area. Realizing something is wrong, the guards shout at UDC to return, but he doesn't hear the warnings. The bodyguard dives underwater, trying to signal the danger to UDC, but UDC resists and surfaces, just in time to witness his companion's death by bullet. Understanding the threat, UDC dives, but a lack of air forces him to briefly surface, which costs him his life. After the shot, the Jackal quickly steers the boat away from the area. The next morning, Nuria hears the news of UDC's death. Meanwhile, the Jackal is fleeing authorities, who have launched a manhunt for him. The assassin is forced to ram a police vehicle, attempting to stop him, triggering a high-speed chase through the city. At the same time, UDC's board of directors announces that the launch of Rivera is postponed indefinitely. The Jackal's clients decide it's time to tie up loose ends. Bianca reports to Isabel that UDC's murder from a boat resembles Tejero's assassination, as both were carried out from long distances. Isabel dismisses the connection and refuses to consider Bianca's proposal. In frustration, Bianca announces her resignation. Shortly afterward, the minister visits Isabel, expressing concern that Bianca might become uncontrollable. He proposes sending her after the Jackal with orders to eliminate him, after which they will deal with her. Meanwhile, the Jackal escapes the police but gets into a car accident. Seeing the crash, a truck driver stops nearby. He helps the Jackal out of his wrecked car, but the assassin pulls a gun on him, steals his truck, and drives away from the scene. Later, the Jackal sets the truck on fire and pushes it off a cliff in a remote area. He then approaches an elderly couple camping nearby and asks for a ride to the hospital. The kind couple, moved by the seemingly charming young man, agrees to help. Meanwhile, Isabel visits Bianca at her home, trying to persuade the agent to return to work. At the same time, the Jackal pulls a gun on the elderly couple's driver and orders him to take him to the Montenegro border. Bianca refuses to continue her work when Isabel requests she eliminate the killer without official sanction. The Jackal orders the couple to pull off the road to rest before the next day's challenges. However, the woman attacks him with a knife and a fight ensues. The husband joins in but is accidentally shot and killed. The Jackal is forced to intentionally kill the woman. That night, Bianca's husband and daughter urge her to finish the mission, as they believe she won't find peace until it's done. The Jackal calls Nuria and asks her to come away with him so they can be together, but she senses he is in danger. The next morning, Bianca and Vince head to Spain, while the Jackal blows up the elderly couple's car and crosses the police checkpoint at the border. Later, the agents learn that a local man named Alvaro was with the murdered gangster at the restaurant, and his sister is married to a wealthy Englishman. The Jackal arrives at the airport and writes to Leonora, demanding the second half of his payment. She contacts her superiors, but they inform her that the job is not complete and that a representative will meet with her to explain everything. Meanwhile, Bianca and Vince stake out the Jackal's house, where only Nuria is present. Bianca suspects a larger conspiracy and wants to uncover the truth. Nuria, however, has had enough. She packs her belongings and money, preparing to flee with her son. She is about to be eliminated to cover up loose ends, leaves her hotel, evading her would-be killer. Night falls and the agents see Nuria leaving with her son in a taxi. Bianca realizes she is fleeing from her husband. Sometime later, the Jackal arrives home and Bianca and Vince quietly follow him, planning to apprehend him in the house. Leonora calls the Jackal to warn him that someone is about to come for him. Discovering that his wife and son are gone, the Jackal gathers his belongings and remaining cash. While he is doing this, a drunk Alvaro stumbles into the house. When the agents enter, Alvaro opens fire and is killed by Bianca in return. The Jackal locks himself in the room with the safe and cuts the power to the house. Bianca finds his wardrobe but doesn't realize he is standing behind the mirror watching her. She decides to flush him out and activates the fire alarm. The Jackal quietly moves into the corridor and kills Vince. In the darkness, Bianca shouts, calling him Dagon and pleading for answers. She admits she pursued him because she loves to win, to which the Jackal replies that he feels the same. Bianca offers to help him get his wife back, but he shoots her. After ensuring she is dead, the Jackal leaves. He races to the airport to catch up with his wife, but gets into another car accident. Sometime later in London, Isabel is promoted to head of the department, while Halcrow receives Bianca's final message confirming that Isabel is a corrupt agent. He deletes the message. The Jackal meets Leonora, who hands him a newspaper featuring the photo of the mastermind behind the assassination plots, pointing out there is still an unpaid debt. However, the Jackal states that his first priority is finding his family. As the Jackal leaves, Leonora wishes him luck. The mix of action and melodrama occasionally surprises with its blatant naivety, but it remains engaging. If approached without excessive expectations, the story is worth the time spent watching.